Your daughter is alive! The raven's shrill cry, echoing through the mansion, tore through the night silence and made millionaire Victor's heart pound at a frantic pace. 7 years of grief and pain, erased by a single sentence uttered by a creature he swore was just a pet. His hands trembled. The world seemed to collapse and rebuild itself in seconds as he stared at Corvus, the raven, who gazed back with an almost human intensity. And a single question hammered in his mind. What had his cold and calculating wife, Isabella, hidden from him all this time? And where could his little heiress be? Corvus, Victor whispered, his voice choked with disbelief and a sudden overwhelming hope. What do you mean, my daughter? My little Aurora. She's alive. The raven, with its black, piercing eyes, tilted its head, a movement Victor interpreted as a painful affirmation. A whirlwind of emotions invaded him, mixing hope with the bitterness of betrayal. 7 years of excruciating emptiness and eternal grief. And now, this revelation. Was it possible? Could Isabella, his wife, have been capable of such cruelty? Corvus, understanding the torment in Victor's soul, gently flapped its wings, flying to a bookshelf and knocking down a picture frame. It was an old photo of Aurora, smiling with golden curls and curious eyes. Victor picked up the frame, his fingers trembling as he touched his daughter's image. A solitary tear traced his face. Is she here, Corvus? In this house? The raven let out a low croak, almost a lament, and flew towards the bedroom door, looking at Victor and then at the dark corridor. It was an invitation, a silent urgency. Victor felt a wave of icy fury. Isabella, her sick jealousy. Everything made sense now, like pieces of a macabre puzzle fitting together. The way she dodged the subject of Aurora, her insistence on keeping areas of the mansion forbidden, the lame excuses. Taking a deep breath, Victor wiped away his tears and clutched the picture frame to his chest. Hope, once a thin thread, was now a burning flame. He had to find her and rescue his Aurora. The raven croaked again, louder, and flew out of the room, landing on the banister of the grand marble staircase, its eyes fixed on Victor like a dark and determined guide. Victor followed, each step echoing in the oppressive silence of the mansion. His heart pounded erratically, mixing the anxiety of the search with the pain of betrayal. How could he have been so blind, so deluded by the facade of a devoted wife? The image of Isabella, falsely smiling at gala dinners while his daughter was imprisoned, gnawed at his soul. He felt like a fool, a father who failed to protect his offspring. But this guilt transformed into an unwavering strength. He would not fail again. Corvus descended the staircase, stopping in the entrance hall, and turned towards a less frequented corridor, which led to the service areas and, beyond them, to an older, forgotten wing of the estate. Victor had never paid attention to this wing, always under Isabella's excuse that it was just storage and nothing interesting. Now, with each step, the truth seemed to unfold, cold and cruel. The raven waited for him in the darkness of the corridor, a vigilant silhouette, ready to show the way to redemption and the justice his little Aurora deserved. Victor hesitated for an instant at the entrance of the dark corridor. The air there was denser and colder, laden with the smell of mold and abandonment. The faint light from the hall barely reached inside, swallowed by shadows dancing on the walls, creating ghostly shapes. Corvus, impatient, croaked again, a sound that seemed to echo the urgency Victor felt in his chest, a mix of dread and an almost unbearable hope. The billionaire took the first step, and the wooden floorboards creaked under his feet, a sound too loud in the sepulchral silence Isabella had cultivated for years. Every meter Victor advanced was a deeper dive into his wife's web of lies. He remembered the countless times she had dissuaded him from exploring that part of the mansion, always with a sweet smile and a ready excuse. It's just an old storage room, dear, full of worthless things. There's nothing to see there, just dust and old junk. Now, with every speck of dust that rose under his shoes, with every cobweb he brushed away with his hand, the truth revealed itself in its cruelest and most desolate form. That area was not just forgotten, it was a carefully guarded secret, a macabre hiding place. Corvus flew ahead, a tireless and silent guide, its black eyes gleaming in the gloom like small obsidian pearls. It landed briefly on a dusty cabinet, then on an old dresser, as if marking the way, confirming with each movement that they were on the right track. Victor followed, his heart pounding, his mind in a whirlwind of thoughts. The image of Aurora, her smiling face in the photograph he still held against his chest, was his beacon, the force that propelled him. He needed to be strong. He needed to unravel every mystery for her, for his small and innocent daughter. The anger against Isabella grew, but it was a controlled anger, channeled into a father's unwavering determination. The corridor seemed endless, winding between closed doors and boarded-up windows, until Corvus stopped abruptly before a stone wall, covered in dry ivy that seemed to have grown there for decades, perfectly disguising it. There was no visible door, just the cold, uneven surface of the rock. Victor frowned, confused, his voice choked. "Corvus, what is this? There's no passage here. It's a dead end." The raven, ignoring Victor's words, began to insistently peck at a specific spot on the wall, a small piece of stone that seemed slightly more prominent than the others, almost imperceptible. Victor approached, incredulity mixed with a sharp pang of hope. He ran his fingers over the stone, feeling its rough, cold texture, and then he realized there was an almost invisible crack, a subtle joint barely distinguishable from the surrounding stone. It was a secret door, camouflaged with terrifying mastery, worthy of a diabolical plan. With an effort that made his muscles protest, Victor pushed the stone. It yielded with a low, drawn-out creak, like an ancient lament, revealing a narrow, dark passage that descended. The air that came from there was even colder and denser, but it carried with it a faint smell of damp earth and a hint of something Victor couldn't identify, but which filled him with a strange sense of closeness, that he was finally on the threshold of his truth. Corvus flew into the opening, disappearing into the inviting darkness, and Victor did not hesitate. He turned on his cell phone flashlight, the trembling light revealing damp, uneven stone steps that seemed to lead into the depths of the earth. With each step, the certainty that he was on the right path rooted deeper in his soul, transforming pain into pure adrenaline. Isabella, he thought, with a lump in his throat and teary eyes. Her cruelty would know no bounds. But his daughter, his little Aurora, was closer than ever. Justice, he promised himself with a choked voice, would be relentless and redemptive. Victor descended the stone steps, the trembling light of his cell phone, barely managing to push back the damp darkness that enveloped him. Each step was cautious, heavy, the echo of his shoes resounding on the cold, rough walls, which seemed to whisper ancient, forgotten secrets. The air, dense and stagnant, carried a strong smell of earth and mold, mixed with a faint, almost imperceptible fragrance that, for an instant, made Victor's heart clench painfully in his chest. It was a sweet, childish scent of talcum powder and flowers, which he hadn't smelled for 7 long years, since the world convinced him of the loss of his little Aurora. Was it his imagination, or the unmistakable prelude to the truth he so desperately sought? Hope mingled with dread, a whirlwind of emotions that left him almost breathless. Corvus, flying ahead with smooth, silent movements, seemed like a black spectre in the gloom, its low, urgent croak serving as a sonic map for the unknown path. It waited at each sharp turn, each uneven landing, its eyes fixed on Victor, a silent and unwavering promise that the path was correct, that redemption was near. The descent seemed interminable, the steps deepening further and further into the bowels of the earth, as if plunging into an abyss of secrets. The grief that had consumed him for so long now transformed into a torrent of icy fury and an almost unbearable hope. How could Isabella be so cruel, so inhuman? How could she deprive him of his daughter, of his joy, of his future for so many years, while living a charade by his side, manipulating his pain with empty smiles and hollow words? The image of Aurora, smiling in the photo he still held tightly against his chest, was a constant and painful reminder of what had been stolen and what he was about to reclaim. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the steps ended on a small earthen landing. Ahead, a rustic, heavy wooden door, almost camouflaged by the dampness and creeping vegetation that enveloped it, blocked the way to the unknown. It was not a common mansion door, but seemed made to be forgotten, to merge with rock and earth, hidden from everyone's sight. Corvus landed on the doorframe, insistently pecking at the wood, its eyes glowing with an almost feverish intensity at Victor. The billionaire approached, his hands trembling as he touched the cold, rough wood. He felt a strange energy, a faint but undeniable pulse of life, coming from behind that barrier. A shiver ran down his spine. With a hesitant push, which required all his strength, the door creaked with a long, drawn-out groan, slowly opening into a small room. Victor's cell phone light, now stronger and more focused, revealed a simple, yet surprisingly cozy and clean space. There was a small bed with floral sheets and a soft pillow, a wooden table with children's books and, on the earthen floor, scattered with colorful toys and a plastic tea set. In the corner, a rag doll with red wool hair seemed to watch him. An unmistakable scent of vanilla and lavender, the same he associated with his little Aurora, filled the air, dispelling any shadow of doubt. His eyes welled up, and a sob escaped his throat, a sound muffled by overwhelming emotion. She was here. She had been here all this time, so close and yet so cruelly far. Victor knelt on the floor, tears streaming freely down his face, marked by pain and hope. He picked up a small teddy bear from the floor, clutching it to his chest. The soft, worn fabric, the gentle scent of the child he loved, was a balm to his soul. His fingers brushed a drawing pinned to the wall with a thumbtack, a smiling sun and colorful flowers with a childish, crooked signature. Aurora. His daughter's unmistakable handwriting, irrefutable proof of her existence, of her resilience. The tears that now flowed were no longer of pain, but of an overwhelming emotion, a mix of relief, joy, and a contained fury against Isabella that promised a storm. He hugged the teddy bear, feeling the warmth of hope rekindling in his chest with an overwhelming force. Justice would be done, he swore, and his daughter, his little Aurora, would finally be free. He promised himself, with a choked voice and a heart overflowing with love and gratitude, that he would never leave her again. Corvus, perched on the window of the small room, watched the scene with its piercing eyes, like a silent guardian, mission accomplished, truth finally revealed. Victor, still kneeling, hugged the teddy bear, his face wet with tears that were now of an almost painful relief. He took a deep breath, trying to absorb every detail of that small sanctuary, the colorful books, the scattered toys, the child's drawing on the wall. Aurora's presence was palpable there, an echo of laughter and play that he thought he had lost forever. His eyes scanned the room once more, searching for her, silently calling her name. But the room was empty. The bed, though neatly made, was empty. Victor's heart, which had been filled with overwhelming hope, felt a new pang. Where was his daughter now? Corvus, as if reading his thoughts, let out a soft croak and flew from the window to the small wooden table, nudging a small folded note with its beak that was under one of the books. Victor dropped the teddy bear and picked up the paper with trembling hands. It was a piece of notebook paper with Isabella's elegant and unmistakable handwriting. The fury he had contained erupted, icy and sharp. He unfolded the note, his eyes scanning the words with feverish speed. "Victor, my love, if you found this place, it means Corvus played his part. Aurora is safe, but not here. She is where you least expect it, in a place you always considered harmless. Come alone, or she will suffer the consequences. You know where to find me." The letter had no signature, but the veiled threat was clear. Isabella was aware she had planned this, and now she was manipulating him again, using his own daughter as bait. Victor's blood boiled. He crumbled the note in his hand, anger transforming into an iron determination. There was no more room for pain or doubt, only the relentless need to find Aurora and end Isabella's charade once and for all. He stood up, his muscles tense, his gaze hardened. Corvus, observing the transformation in its owner, flew back to the opening of the secret door, waiting. Victor followed, but before leaving, he looked once more at Aurora's room, engraving every detail in his memory. He picked up the drawing of the sun and flowers, carefully folding it and putting it in his jacket pocket, along with the teddy bear. They would be his amulets, his reminders of the innocence he needed to protect. Leaving that hiding place seemed faster, driven by urgency. The damp steps and the dark corridor no longer seemed so frightening. They were just a path to be taken. Victor felt his heart pounding, but now it was a rhythm of combat, not despair. He walked through the forgotten wing of the mansion, his cell phone light illuminating the way, and Corvus flew ahead, a dark and swift point. Upon reaching the main hall, the mansion seemed strangely silent, a silence that was once of grief, but now sounded like an omen. Isabella was nowhere in sight. Victor knew she was playing a cruel game, and he was ready to win it. Corvus, perched on the staircase banister, didn't look upstairs. Instead, it flapped its wings and flew towards the grand entrance door, stopping there and looking at Victor with an intensity that left no doubt. Isabella's message, "In a place you always considered harmless," echoed in Victor's mind. Harmless. A place outside the mansion, perhaps. He opened the main door, feeling the cold night breeze on his face. Corvus flew out towards the well-tended gardens, but not to the main area. It headed for a less used path, winding through ancient trees and dense bushes, leading to a more secluded part of the vast estate. Victor knew exactly where Corvus was guiding him. It was the old tool shed, a place Isabella had always insisted on keeping locked, claiming it was dangerous and full of old junk. He had never questioned it. Now, the truth unfolded with brutal clarity. The isolated shed, the harmless place. That's where his daughter was. With each step, Victor felt adrenaline pumping through his veins. The promise of justice and reunion with his little Aurora propelling him forward through the darkness of the night and the web of lies. Victor followed Corvus down the dark path, his heart beating like a war drum. The night breeze whipped his face, but he barely felt the cold, driven by an unwavering force. The dense bushes seemed like slender arms trying to stop him, and the ancient trees, with their twisted branches, formed ghostly silhouettes against the starless sky. Every dry leaf that crunched under his shoes was a reminder of the urgency of his mission. The old tool shed, a place he had always ignored, now appeared in his mind with a disturbing clarity. How could he have been so blind, so oblivious to the cruelty hidden beneath the veil of his own home? Finally, the faint light of his cell phone revealed the silhouette of the shed. It was an old, weathered wooden structure with dusty windows and loose planks, looking ready to collapse. Wild ivy covered much of its walls, and the roof, once red, was now faded and moss-covered. There were no signs of life, just the heavy silence of the night and the occasional croak of Corvus, who had already landed on the doorframe, watching Victor with its piercing eyes. Victor approached. The shiver down his spine was not of fear, but of overwhelming anticipation. He noticed that the door, though old, had a modern, robust padlock, a stark contrast to the dilapidated appearance of the cabin. Isabella had gone to great lengths to keep that place secure, hidden. With a pull, he realized the door was locked. Fury bubbled up again. "Corvus, how?" The raven, as if understanding, flew to a small gap above the doorframe, where a piece of wood was loose. With its beak, it nudged something shiny hidden there. It was a small rusty key, but undeniably the key to the padlock. Victor took it, his fingers trembling, and inserted it into the lock. The metallic click echoed loudly in the silence, a sound of liberation. He pushed the door, which creaked with a piteous groan, revealing a dark and stuffy interior. The smell of earth, old wood, and something sweeter, familiar, flooded his nostrils. Victor turned on his cell phone flashlight, and the light danced through the small space. It was not a common tool shed. There was a mattress on the floor, covered by a clean sheet, a small wooden chest with toys, and a stack of children's books. Colorful drawings of flowers and animals were taped to the wall. And then he saw her. Huddled in the farthest corner behind a chest was a little girl. Her golden curls, once vibrant, were a little dull, and her large, curious eyes, which Victor remembered so well, were wide with fear. She was small, thin, but unmistakably his Aurora. 7 years had passed, and she had grown, but the essence of his daughter was there, intact. Victor felt a lump in his throat. His legs weakened. He knelt slowly, extending his trembling hand. "Aurora. My little Aurora." His voice was a hoarse whisper, almost inaudible. The girl watched him with suspicion, without moving. The fear in her eyes was a blow to Victor's heart. He had failed to protect her, and now she saw him as a stranger. "Don't be afraid, my love," he said, trying to soften his voice. "It's me, Daddy. Do you remember Daddy?" He showed her the drawing of the sun and flowers he had taken from the secret room, and the teddy bear. Aurora's eyes widened a little more, and a flicker of recognition, faint as a flickering candle, appeared in her gaze. She pointed to the teddy bear, and an almost inaudible sound escaped her lips. At that exact moment, a cold, calculating voice echoed from the cabin door, making Victor and Aurora jump. What a touching scene, Victor, but the reunion won't be as simple as you imagine. Isabella was there, standing in the doorway, her slender silhouette against the darkness of the night, a cruel smile playing on her lips. Her eyes, once full of false devotion, now gleamed with icy malice. Victor stood up, instinctively placing himself in front of Aurora, shielding her with his body. The fury he had contained for so long exploded in his chest, but he knew he needed to remain calm for Aurora. The final battle had begun. Isabella, with a smile that didn't reach her icy eyes, took a step forward, the faint light of the cabin revealing the coldness in her demeanor. "What a pity, Victor. I thought we'd have more time for this little game of hide and seek." Her voice was calm, almost bored, a chilling contrast to the fury boiling in Victor's chest. He felt Aurora shrink further behind him, a small tremor running through her body. The billionaire clenched his fists, anger and icy fire in his veins. "Game? You call this a game, Isabella? 7 years of lies, of pain, of unspeakable cruelty. How could you do this to our daughter, to your own daughter?" Isabella laughed, a dry, humorless sound that made Victor grit his teeth. "Our daughter? Victor, you live in a fairy tale. Aurora was always a distraction, a small shadow between us, stealing the attention that was rightfully mine." She looked at the girl with a contempt that made Victor's stomach churn. You were so absorbed in your fatherhood, so blinded by adoration for her, that you forgot about me. I was your wife, your love, but to you I became just the mother of your daughter. Victor felt a shock run through his body. This was the true Isabella, stripped of any pretense. The sick jealousy, the possessiveness, all exposed in its cruelest form. You are sick, Isabella. That doesn't justify what you did. To deprive a child of her family, of her life, is unforgivable. Unforgivable? She raised an eyebrow, a gesture of disdain. I was protecting you, Victor. Protecting us. Didn't you realize how exhausting life with a small child was? How she consumed all your time, your energy? I wanted you back, all to myself. I wanted the life we had before, the freedom, the passion. Her eyes flashed with a disturbing intensity. I gave you 7 years of peace, Victor. 7 years to recover from grief, to reconnect with the man I loved, without the constant demands of a child. The cruelty of her words was a blow stronger than any physical assault. Victor staggered, not from force, but from the abjectness of that revelation. She had rewritten the story of his suffering, turning it into a convenience for her own selfish desires. Aurora, sensing the tension, clutched Victor's pants, her face hidden, but her small shoulders trembled. Victor's heart broke, seeing the fear in his daughter, a fear he now understood to be the result of years of isolation and manipulation. Corvus, who had been watching everything from the doorframe, let out a loud, shrill croak like a cry of alarm. It flew towards Isabella, flapping its wings near her face, an animal fury in its eyes. Isabella recoiled a step. Surprised, her mask of coldness for an instant cracked by irritation. "You infernal bird! Get out of here!" Victor seized the distraction. He bent down, hugging Aurora tightly, feeling the warmth of her small, fragile body. "It's okay, my love. Daddy's here now. No one will hurt you." He held her firm, turning to Isabella with a look of pure determination. "It's over, Isabella. Your game is done. Aurora is with me, and you will pay for every day of pain you caused us." Isabella, recomposing herself, cast a look of hatred at Corvus and then at Victor. "You think it's that simple? You don't understand anything, Victor. I didn't do this alone. There are more people involved, people who helped me keep this secret, people who benefited from Aurora's death. Do you really think a simple raven was the only one to unravel everything?" She smiled, a dark, victorious smile. "The truth is much more complex than you imagine, my dear. And you're about to discover that not all your allies are as trustworthy as they seem." The air in the cabin seemed thin. Victor felt a chill down his spine. Isabella's revelation was an unexpected blow, a turning point that cast a new and dangerous shadow over his quest for justice. Who else was involved? Who else had betrayed his trust? The battle was not just against Isabella, but against a web of complicity he was just beginning to glimpse. He hugged Aurora even tighter, uncertainty and fury battling in his chest. Victor felt a chill down his spine, Isabella's revelation echoing. Who else? He searched for a lie on her face, but her eyes gleamed with a dark truth. Aurora, clinging to him, sobbed. Victor held her tight, feeling the warmth of his daughter. She needed to be protected. "Who are they, Isabella?" Victor asked, his voice controlled, hiding the internal storm. Isabella smiled. "Ah, Victor, you've always been naive. Do you think I alone could keep a child hidden for 7 years on your property without anyone noticing or benefiting? Your empire is vast. Many see opportunity." Corvus, on the doorframe, croaked in warning, restless, its eyes fixed on Isabella. Victor felt a knot in his stomach. His empire, a house of cards, lawyers, managers, trusted people. Such an atrocity? "That changes nothing, Isabella," Victor declared, his voice firm. "You are the mastermind, the one responsible, and you will face the consequences." He began to stand, holding Aurora, to leave. Isabella blocked the exit. Don't be foolish, Victor. Do you think you can just walk away and everything will be resolved? The other people won't stand idly by. They have too much to lose. They won't hesitate to use means to protect their secrets. Victor stopped, tense. The threat was clear. Not just Isabella, but a network willing to do anything. He looked at Aurora, her eyes wide, absorbing the tension. Her innocence contrasted brutally with the darkness. Aurora's safety was the priority. He couldn't risk her life. "What do you want, Isabella?" Victor asked, his voice exhausted but cunning. He needed to buy time. Isabella smiled, triumph in her eyes. "I want what I've always wanted, Victor, my life back. That you forget this charade, that Aurora disappears again, that we go back to being the couple we were." She extended her hand, a repulsive gesture. "We can start over. No one needs to know. We'll say Aurora was found, but she was very ill and—" well, you understand." Victor felt horror. She suggested lying, sacrificing the truth and Aurora again. The proposal was sickening. He looked at Aurora, who hugged him tighter, sensing the danger. Betraying his daughter's trust, denying her existence, was unthinkable. "Never, Isabella," Victor replied, his voice a thunder. "That will never happen. You will no longer manipulate my life, or Aurora's life. I will expose you, and I will protect our daughter, no matter the cost." He took a step back, assessing the options. The cabin was small. Isabella blocked the door. He needed a plan, fast. Corvus, sensing the urgency, flew in circles above Isabella, croaking loudly, trying to distract her. The distraction was a gift. Victor looked at the small, dusty window. Too small, but maybe. He hugged Aurora, whispering, "Trust me, my love. Daddy will get you out of here." The confrontation was inevitable, but not there with Aurora as a hostage. He needed an environment where he could think and fight without risking his daughter. The web of lies was complex, but the truth, he swore, would find a way. Victor could no longer hesitate. The web of lies was complex, but the truth, he swore, would find a way. With Isabella still distracted by Corvus's furious croak, which flew in circles near her face, Victor acted. He turned to the small, dusty window. "Aurora, my love," he whispered, "be brave. Daddy will help you get out through here. Can you do it?" The girl nodded slightly, a flicker of trust in her eyes. Victor felt immense relief. "You infernal bird! Get out of here!" Isabella screamed, swatting her hands to ward off Corvus. The distraction was perfect. Victor handed the teddy bear to Aurora. "Hold tight!" With determination, he pushed the window. The planks groaned, and the window yielded, opening to the darkness. "What are you doing, Victor?" Isabella exclaimed, realizing. Her icy eyes widened. She tried to advance, but Corvus landed on her shoulder, nipping her. Isabella let out a scream. Recoiling, Victor seized the opportunity. He carefully lifted Aurora. "Slowly, my love, head first." He guided her through the narrow opening, her small shoulders scraping against the wood. Aurora, clutching the teddy bear, obeyed, her eyes fixed on his, a mix of fear and faith. "No, you won't take her." Isabella screamed, breaking free from Corvus. She ran towards Victor, her hands outstretched, but Victor was faster. With a final push, Aurora slipped out of the cabin. He turned, using his body to block Isabella, who hit him with a shove. Victor staggered, but held firm. "She is my daughter, Isabella, and you will never hurt her again." His voice was a roar, laden with pain and fierce determination. Isabella, her eyes flashing with hatred, tried to pass, but Victor held her by the arms. "You'll regret this, Victor. You don't know who you're dealing with," she hissed. Victor ignored her. He needed to get out of there. The threat of the other people still loomed. He released Isabella and, with an agile leap, went through the window. Landing softly on the ground, Aurora was there, standing, safe. Corvus, flying out, landed on Victor's shoulder, croaking softly. Victor hugged Aurora tightly, feeling relief flooding his body. "We're safe, my love. We're safe." But the safety was only momentary. The night was still long, and Isabella's web extended far beyond that cabin. He needed a plan, and fast. He looked into the darkness of the estate, his heart pounding. Where would they go now? Who could help them? The mansion, once his refuge, now seemed like a trap. Victor clutched Aurora to him, his daughter's small, trembling body nestled in his arms, a safe harbor in the midst of the storm. The cold night breeze, which before seemed just a shiver, now brought with it a sense of vulnerability. The old tool shed, with its creaking door and the darkness emanating from its interior, seemed a portal to the cruelty Isabella had orchestrated. Victor looked at the vast estate, once his sanctuary, now a labyrinth of uncertainties. The mansion, with its distant lights, was no longer a refuge, but rather the epicenter of a web of lies. "Daddy." "Scared," Aurora whispered, her voice almost inaudible, her face hidden in Victor's shoulder. He felt his heart clench even tighter. 7 years of silent terror had marked his little one. He kissed her dusty golden hair, a gesture of love and promise. "Don't be afraid, my love. Daddy's here. No one will hurt you, I swear." His eyes swept the darkness, searching for a path and escape. Isabella's revelation about accomplices weighed like a stone in his chest. Who else? Who in his circle of trust could have participated in such an atrocity? Doubt gnawed, turning every shadow into a potential threat. Corvus, perched on Victor's shoulder, croaked softly, as if understanding his owner's anguish. It flapped its wings and flew a few meters ahead, stopping and looking at Victor with its intelligent eyes, then towards an even more hidden path, which branched off the main one and plunged into a densely wooded, almost untouched area of the estate. Victor understood the message. They couldn't go back to the mansion, nor to the obvious paths. They needed a safe place away from curious eyes and treacherous hands. With Aurora still in his arms, Victor followed Corvus. Each step was cautious, the uneven ground and darkness hindering visibility. The girl, though scared, remained quiet, clinging to him. Her newly found trust was a balm for Victor's wounded soul. He felt her fragility, the need for protection, and this responsibility propelled him. He thought of his team, his lawyers, his managers. Could any of them be involved? The idea was nauseating. The extent of Isabella's betrayal seemed boundless, and the possibility that others benefited from his family's pain was a devastating blow. The path became steeper, and Victor felt fatigue begin to weigh him down, but Aurora's image propelled him. Corvus, always ahead, guided them with precision. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they emerged into a small clearing. In the center, there was an old hunting lodge, a rustic structure Victor rarely used, a forgotten refuge amidst the vastness of his estate. It was simple, but it seemed safe. The windows were dusty, but the solid wooden door seemed intact. "It's here, my love," Victor whispered to Aurora, who raised her head, her curious eyes observing the new environment. He felt a thread of hope. The hunting lodge was a place Isabella detested, considering it primitive and uncomfortable. It was unlikely that she or her accomplices would think to look for them there. Corvus landed on the roof, watching the area with vigilance. Victor, with Aurora still in his arms, approached the door, feeling a mix of relief and the persistent urgency that this was just a pause, not the end of the battle. The real fight, that of unraveling the web of complicity and ensuring justice, was yet to come. But for now, they were together, and that was all that mattered. Victor, with Aurora nestled in his arms, pushed open the door of the old hunting lodge. The muffled creak echoed in the silence, and a smell of old wood and dust filled his nostrils. The interior was dark, illuminated only by the faint moonlight filtering through the dusty windows. He turned on his cell phone flashlight, revealing a simple space, a stone fireplace, a worn sofa covered by an old sheet, and a rustic table in the center. There was no luxury, but there was a sense of isolation, and for now, safety. He walked to the sofa, sitting down carefully, holding Aurora tightly against him. She raised her head, her large, curious eyes scanning the room, still with a trace of fear, but also a growing, childish curiosity. Victor felt a momentary relief. They were out of Isabella's immediate reach. Corvus landed on the windowsill, its black eyes watching the darkness outside like a tireless sentinel. Victor stroked Aurora's hair, feeling its soft and slightly tangled texture. "It's okay, my love," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "We're safe here. Daddy will take care of you." Aurora looked at him, and a small smile, faint as a sunbeam after the storm, appeared on her lips. She extended a small hand and touched Victor's face, a simple gesture that made his heart overflow. It was the first time she had touched him with such spontaneity, a sign that the barrier of fear was beginning to yield. But Victor's mind could not rest. Isabella's words echoed. There are more people involved. The idea that others, perhaps people he trusted blindly, could have conspired against his own daughter was a slow poison, corroding his soul. Lawyers, managers, even some of his oldest employees. Distrust was a heavy burden. How could he have been so naive, so blind to the evil hidden beneath the veneer of his perfect life? He needed to act, but with caution. He couldn't trust anyone without being sure first. Aurora's safety was paramount. He watched her falling asleep in his arms, her breathing soft and regular. That image of his daughter finally at peace gave him renewed strength. He would not fail her again. Victor knew that the hunting lodge was a temporary hiding place. Sooner or later, Isabella, with her network of accomplices, would find them. He needed a plan that would not only protect Aurora, but also dismantle the entire web of lies. But who? Who could help him? Whom he could fully trust? His thoughts flew to the past, to people he had helped, to longtime friends who, though distant, had always shown loyalty. There was one name, an old college friend, a respected and upright lawyer who had stepped away from the corporate world to dedicate himself to social justice. He was the only hope. Victor looked at Corvus, who was still watching the night. "Corvus," he whispered, "you guided me here. Now I need your help to unravel the rest." The raven tilted its head, as if understanding the enormity of the task. Victor felt a wave of determination. He was not alone. With Aurora safe in his arms and Corvus as his faithful guardian, he would face any challenge. Justice would be done, and his family finally would be restored. He would close his eyes for an instant, seeking strength before charting the next steps of his difficult journey. Victor opened his eyes. The darkness of the hunting lodge still enveloped him, but now, with a new clarity. The image of Aurora, asleep in his arms, was his beacon. He could no longer afford to hesitate. Isabella's web was vast, but the truth was more powerful. Carefully, so as not to wake his daughter, he picked up his cell phone. The battery was low, but enough for a crucial and urgent call. The name of Daniel, his lawyer friend, glowed on the screen. Daniel was a man of unwavering principles, whom Victor trusted with his life and Aurora's. Daniel's voice, hoarse with sleep, answered. "Victor, is something wrong? It's late." Victor took a deep breath, the words coming out in a contained gush of urgency. "Daniel, I need you. It's about Aurora. She's alive, and Isabella did something terrible." The silence on the other end was heavy, laden with disbelief. "Victor, what are you saying? Aurora, but she died 7 years ago." Victor felt the grief revive, but hope was stronger. "No, Daniel. She was held captive by Isabella on the estate, and there are more people involved. I need you to come, now, to the hunting lodge." Daniel, after a moment of shock, his voice more alert and firm, replied, "I'm on my way. Don't move. Don't trust anyone, Victor. No one." His friend's determination was a balm. Victor ended the call, feeling tenuous relief, but urgency consumed him. He looked at Corvus, who watched him from the windowsill. "Daniel is coming, Corvus, but we need proof. We need to expose all of them." The raven croaked, agreeing, and flew out the window, disappearing into the darkness. Victor felt a shiver. Corvus always knew more. While waiting, Victor lit the fireplace, the comforting warmth filling the room. Aurora stirred in his arms, and he snuggled her closer. With each passing minute, anxiety grew. Who were these accomplices? How had Isabella kept such a monstrous secret for so long under his roof? The betrayal was an abyss he was just beginning to fathom. He thought of the faces of his employees, close collaborators. The idea of their involvement was nauseating. Suddenly Corvus returned, landing on the window with something in its beak. A small USB drive. It dropped it on the rustic table. Victor picked up the object, his heart pounding. It was an encrypted USB drive he used for confidential documents, lost for years. How had Corvus found it? And what would be on it? The headlights of a car cut through the darkness outside. Daniel had arrived. Victor felt a wave of hope and fear. The truth was about to be revealed, and he knew the consequences would be devastating. He looked at Aurora, still sleeping, and then at the USB drive in his hand. This was the climax. The time to unravel everything had come. He hugged Aurora one last time, the promise of justice on his lips. "Come, my love, the truth will set us free." Victor clutched Aurora to him, the words resonating in his chest like an oath. The sound of approaching headlights was a mix of relief and dread. Daniel, his longtime friend, walked through the hunting lodge door, his face etched with worry. His eyes, accustomed to the gloom, widened at the sight of the small figure in Victor's arms. "Victor, is it really her?" Daniel whispered, his voice choked with disbelief, his eyes fixed on Aurora. Victor nodded, a lump in his throat. "It's her, Daniel, our Aurora, alive." Daniel, a man usually reserved, approached and embraced Victor with a strength that conveyed all the shock and solidarity. He looked at Aurora, a mix of sadness and awe in his gaze. 7 years. Victor, how? Isabella. She kept her captive, and there are others involved, Victor explained, his voice hoarse. He held out the USB drive Corvus had brought. "Corvus found it. I think the truth is here." Daniel took the USB drive, his experienced fingers examining the object with curiosity. "Encrypted, just like you always use for the most confidential documents. This is a goldmine, Victor, if it contains what I imagine." With the help of a small laptop Daniel carried for emergencies, a habit from his old corporate life, they sat near the fireplace. The heat of the flames danced on their tense faces, casting restless shadows on the walls. Corvus landed on Victor's shoulder, watching the screen with an almost human intelligence, its bright eyes fixed on the unfolding scene. With each file opened, a layer of Isabella's web unraveled. Emails, bank statements, voice recordings, forged documents, names of trusted employees, lawyers, and even a former wealth manager of Victor's appeared on the screen, all accomplices in Isabella's macabre plan. They had benefited financially from Aurora's death, ensuring the inheritance was redirected, and Victor remained in his grief, manipulable and blind. Victor felt an icy chill run down his spine. The extent of the betrayal was overwhelming, a deep blow to his faith in humanity. People in whom he had placed his faith, who had shared his grief, were wolves in sheep's clothing. The pain of betrayal was almost as intense as the joy of having Aurora back, but hope prevailed. Daniel, with his sharp legal mind, began to organize the evidence meticulously. This is irrefutable, Victor. Isabella will have nowhere to run, and these accomplices, the law will be relentless. But we will do this with discretion to protect Aurora and avoid an unnecessary media circus. Victor nodded. The priority was always his daughter, her safety and well-being. I want everyone to pay, Daniel, but I want Aurora to feel safe, loved, for her to know that justice prevailed for her and that love is stronger than evil. While Daniel worked, Victor held Aurora, who slept deeply, oblivious to the storm unfolding around her. He kissed her forehead, smelling the scent of childhood and the promise of new hope. The image of Isabella with her dark smile seemed to fade before the light of truth that now enveloped them. At dawn, with the plan laid out and the evidence organized, Victor felt a huge weight lifted from his shoulders. Daniel had already made the first contacts discreetly with the right authorities, ensuring the investigation would be conducted with utmost caution and effectiveness. Isabella would be confronted with irrefutable evidence and would have no way to deny her unspeakable cruelty. The accomplices, one by one, would be held accountable, their names and their actions exposed to the light of law and truth. Justice, which had seemed so distant and unattainable, was finally within reach. There would be no violence, only the unwavering force of truth and law. Victor looked at Aurora, who was beginning to awaken, her blue eyes blinking slowly, adjusting to the light. He smiled, a genuine smile, long forgotten, full of love and relief. Corvus on the windowsill croaked softly, like a guardian who had fulfilled its mission with honor. That raven, the messenger of pain and redemption, had restored his family. Victor knew the healing journey would be long, but now, with Aurora in his arms and the truth revealed, he had everything he needed to start anew. The hunting lodge, once a temporary refuge, was now the cradle of a new beginning, of a family reborn from the ashes of grief, stronger and more united than ever, ready for a future of peace and love. The dawn brought with it not only the sunlight, but also clarity for Victor's soul. With Aurora still asleep in his arms, he watched Daniel, who was already making the first calls, his voice low and firm on the phone, organizing the steps for justice. The plan was meticulous, to ensure that Isabella and her accomplices were confronted with irrefutable evidence, but discreetly, protecting Aurora from any unnecessary media exposure. The priority was the girl's peace, not the spectacle. While Daniel worked, Victor felt Aurora's body stir. She opened her eyes, blinking a few times, and met her father's gaze. A small, genuine and pure smile lit up the child's face. "Daddy, son," she whispered, pointing to the window where the first rays of sun painted the sky golden. Victor felt his heart overflow. That was the true dawn, the beginning of a new life. He hugged her tenderly, silently promising that every day would be filled with love and security. Hours later, the authorities, guided by Daniel and armed with the evidence from the USB drive, acted. Isabella was confronted with the brutal truth, her lies and manipulations exposed without a chance of defense. The image of the perfect and dedicated woman crumbled, revealing the cruelty that had been hidden for 7 long years. The accomplices, one by one, were called to account, their selfish and treacherous actions coming to light. There was no violence, only the unwavering force of law and truth which prevailed over the darkness. Victor and Aurora, under Daniel's protection, remained in the hunting lodge for a few days, a refuge of healing and rediscovery. There, away from curious eyes and the weight of the mansion, they began to rebuild lost bonds. Victor read stories to Aurora, played with her in the small garden, and with each laugh from his daughter, he felt a piece of his heart, once shattered, restore itself. Corvus, always present, landed on Victor's shoulder or on the window, a silent guardian, its intelligent eyes observing the scene with ancestral wisdom. It was more than a pet. It was a silent and beloved family member, the link that had brought truth and redemption. The mansion, once a mausoleum of grief, was purified. Traces of Isabella's presence were removed, and Victor and Aurora's home was filled with new colors, new toys, and above all, a new energy of hope. Victor dedicated himself to Aurora with a renewed passion, making up for the lost years. He took her for walks in the gardens, taught her to draw and paint, and together they rediscovered joy in the simplest things in life. Overcoming Aurora's trauma was a gradual process, but Victor's constant and loving presence and Corvus's unwavering loyalty were the pillars of her recovery. Justice finally had been done. Isabella would face the consequences of her actions and her accomplices, disgrace and legal punishment. But for Victor, the true victory was not punishment, but the restoration of his family. He looked at Aurora, who now ran freely through the mansion's corridors, her laughter echoing, and felt immense gratitude. The raven, perched on its favorite windowsill, croaked softly, as if celebrating the peace that had finally arrived. Victor knew that life would still bring challenges, but with Aurora by his side and Corvus as his guide, he was ready to embrace the future. Family, love, and truth had triumphed, and the mansion, once the scene of a tragedy, was now a sanctuary of hope and a silent testament that, even in the greatest adversities, hope always finds a way to bloom. Months passed since the truth bloomed like a rare flower amidst the ruins of Victor's grief. The mansion, once a dark echo of his pain, now shone with a different light, a vibrant energy that came from Aurora's laughter. Every corner, every corridor, which once seemed to hold secrets and sorrows, was now the stage for new memories, painted with the colors of hope. Victor woke up every day with a renewed purpose, a gratitude that warmed his chest and chased away the last shadows of the past. Aurora, though still bearing the invisible marks of her 7 years of captivity, bloomed under her father's unconditional love. Her blue eyes, once filled with fear, now sparkled with an insatiable curiosity and contagious joy. She rediscovered the world every day, the scent of flowers in the garden, the soft touch of grass under her bare feet, the sweet taste of a ripe peach. Victor dedicated himself to her with a devotion that made up for the lost years. Together, they explored the vast estate, built sandcastles by the lake, and read storybooks, with Victor imitating funny voices that made Aurora giggle. Each laugh from her was a balm for his soul, a constant reminder that love had, indeed, triumphed. Corvus, the faithful guardian, remained a constant presence. It landed on Victor's shoulder as he worked in his office, or watched Aurora play in the garden, its intelligent eyes following the girl's every move. It was no longer just a messenger, it was a silent and beloved family member, a living symbol of courage and truth. Aurora, fearless, extended her hand to it, and Corvus, with surprising delicacy, allowed her to caress it, an unusual and deep bond uniting the child and the bird. Daniel, the loyal friend, continued to be a pillar of support. He helped Victor restructure his businesses, ensuring that Isabella's accomplices were duly held accountable, but always with utmost discretion, protecting Aurora from any public exposure. Justice had been done, not with vengeance, but with the firmness of one who seeks to restore order and truth. Victor, with Daniel's help, also established a foundation for child victims of abuse and neglect, a legacy of altruism born from his own pain and overcoming. He wanted no other child to suffer what Aurora had endured. The mansion, once a cold marble palace, transformed into a welcoming home. Heavy furniture was replaced by lighter, more colorful pieces. The once gray walls gained vibrant hues, and a playroom was created, filled with teddy bears, dolls, and books. Aurora, for the first time, felt truly at home, safe and loved. She still had her moments of introspection, small fears that resurfaced, but Victor was always there, with a tight hug and words of affection to remind her of her strength and worth. On a sunny afternoon, Victor and Aurora sat on the lawn, watching corvus fly in circles above their heads. Aurora, with a drawing in her hands, a big, smiling sun, with two figures holding hands, looked at Victor. "Daddy, is that us?" she asked, pointing to the figures. Victor smiled, a smile that reached his eyes. "Yes, my love, it's us, together, forever." He hugged her, feeling the warmth of her small body, the scent of childhood, and the promise of a bright future. The dark past had been overcome. Human connection, a father's unwavering love for his daughter, and a raven's loyalty had rewritten their destiny. Life, with its complexities and challenges, would continue, but Victor knew that with his family restored, he had the strength to face anything. The mansion now was a sanctuary of love, a silent testament that, even in the greatest adversities, hope always finds a way to bloom.